In the last couple of decades, dozens of scientists and technology moguls have pushed different forms of transhumanism in the media. Advertised to us as the next step in evolution, transhumanism is the idea of upgrading humanity and controlling our evolutionary development with the use of technology, by either upgrading our body with implants and genetic modification, or by uploading our minds into computers to turn us into immortal digital entities that rule the universe as gods. But there's a dirty secret to transhumanism. There's something that they're not admitting while they're pushing this on us. Transhumanism is eugenics. Transhumanism is simply the rebranded term for eugenical control of humanity, usually with the goal of creating the ideal population.
Most people think eugenics equals the Nazis, right? And then they also think eugenics is over after World War II, but both are wrong. The Nazis actually studied California's sterilization program in detail when they were working on their blueprint of the racial hygiene policies. Eugenics also did not end after World War II, so California's sterilization program continued until 1979. The British Eugenics Society lasted until 1989, then changed their name to the Galton Institute, then to Adelphi Genetics Forum. There is a term, the eternal return of eugenics, right? It always comes back in some form.
Even though they usually tell us they're doing this to save humanity, transhumanism is just this generation's attempt to dominate human development, hoping to optimize us and our children in an attempt to shape their image of a perfect population, or at least a survivor population.
Julian Huxley writes, by controlling the mechanisms of heredity, the human species can, if it wishes, transcend itself not just sporadically, but it's in its entirety as humanity. If enough people can truly say, I believe in transhumanism, then the human species will be on the threshold of a new kind of existence, as different from ours as is that of Peking Man. It will at last be consciously fulfilling its real destiny. Humanity can just transcend being human, right? That's the goal. And that really is the destiny, the collective destiny of humanity. So it's not just to improve the human stock, like the first wave eugenics, but it also is to transcend humanity altogether.
These powerful idealists are leading humanity to a point that they call the technological singularity, a time in our near future when computers and AI become so smart that it will surpass humanity and thrust our civilization forward whether we wanted to or not, resulting in humans and the world becoming so advanced that we're not even able to predict what it will look like. There's no way to meaningfully model what life will actually be like in the future. But perhaps that's just the sales pitch of the Borg. Resistance is futile, the technological future that we can't predict. I think that so many people are afraid of AI not just because of its potential to harm us, but because of the clearly stated goals of the people who are going to wield that AI, the philosophies behind the engineers that are pioneering these technologies.
We're working with the government of Malta on an initiative toward a robot citizenship test and an AI citizenship test for even AIs without a body. Sophia was made a citizen of Saudi Arabia last year, which is interesting, but having AIs made a citizen of a country with the rule of law and with specific rights and obligations of citizenship is also cool.
Engineers are planning to create AI avatars so realistic that we will have no choice but to interact with them as if they're conscious, whether we believe they're conscious or not. They want us to treat these AI avatars as if they're real people.
Intelligence is not just being fantastic at logical thinking and missing all of emotional intelligence, because we're already there. I mean, computers are already better than humans at logical thinking. Even mathematicians cannot hold up to Mathematica running on a personal computer. And that's exactly the heart of my prediction, that these computers will match us in emotional intelligence, which includes our whole moral system.
Did you know this? That they're trying to build an entire species of AI avatars that are going to integrate into humanity?
We will get to fantastic levels that sort of rival what has been discussed in the religious traditions, at least move in that direction. And you can consider these spiritual concepts, you can consider evolution a spiritual journey or a spiritual process, because we become more godlike. never quite reaching that ideal, but we do move in that direction.
But regardless of their constant assurance that they're trying to take care of us, and their assurance that AI will create a net positive for us, I think all you really need to do is look at the mentalities of the corporations that are going to be using these machines. The people who wield this power are only going to use it against us. I don't understand why anybody would want a walking metadata collector in their home. And any new technology that could potentially be introduced into the workforce often totally disempowers that workforce.
We are fast approaching an event unprecedented in our history, a tipping point known as a technological singularity. When this happens, the world will change forever. A new chapter in human history will begin. It may be 20 years away, it may be 1,000, but most experts agree the technological singularity is inevitable. The fear is, if it's uncontrolled, the results could be catastrophic. When the singularity arrives, we cannot predict what these super intelligent machines will do. They will have their own goals and stop at nothing to fulfill them. They may even choose to eliminate everything that stands in their path, including us.
They may describe the technological singularity to us as an inevitability that we cannot avoid. Perhaps it really is something we couldn't stop even if we tried. But the truth is that this is their ideological goal. They want this. They're creating it. They're pushing it. I think it's possible that they know that the outcome is going to be dystopian for most of humanity, but these leaders in the technological singularity movement are so fixated on building this AI army and becoming immortal digital gods that they don't care what the rest of us think. Their egos are so fixated on their own fears of death and fears of losing their power and wealth in their lifetimes that they have no empathy towards those of us that resist this change, those of us who will not benefit from this change. I mean, look at the current ideology being played out by the leaders of our world today. Do you think any of this is going to change? They exploit the impoverished by using them to work dangerous jobs like children as cheap labor to collect cobalt in makeshift mines. They allow the disenfranchised to live without meaningful health care, without food, clean water, or even proper nutrition. I mean, hell, they won't even let the average person eat properly with all the chemicals in our food or the genetic modification they do to our produce. The future is going to look a lot like this, or worse, but they're hoping that we're not going to care that it's worse, because we'll be able to merge our brains with the digital world and live out endless fantasies in the Matrix. For real. I didn't make that last part up.
We are going to create synthetic neocortexes. I'm actually working on that. I think the principal application will actually be to extend our own neocortex. We'll be able to extend that and think in the cloud. You know, if you do anything interesting with this, do a search or language translation or bring up a map or ask it a question. It doesn't take place in the box. It goes out to the cloud. We're going to put these gateways. This is a gateway to the cloud. We're going to put gateways to the cloud in our brains and have more than 300 million. You'll be able to access that in the cloud. That's where we're headed, and we'll be more intelligent and able to actually think in a greater number of hierarchies.
As crazy as that sounds, that's actually what they're trying to do. It's like none of them watch movies, apparently.
My prediction is, this is an objective prediction, we will come to accept entities that are not biological as conscious. But it's not going to be, okay, machines on the right side of the room, humans on the left. So it's going to be all mixed up. There's not going to be a clear distinction between human and machine. The bottom line is we are one human-machine civilization. This technology has already expanded who we are, and it's going to go into high gear when we get to the steep part of the exponential.
We do not want to be ruled by machines. We do not want to be replaced by something artificial. And then much worse, are insulted by being forced to treat it like it's a human.
I was on a panel with a famous transhumanist, and he was arguing that it's time that human beings come to accept that we will have to pass the torch of evolution to our digital successors, and that once computers have the singularity and they're really thinking and better than us, then we should really only stick around as long as the computers need us, you know, to keep the lights on and oil their little circuits or whatever we have to do, and then after that, fade into oblivion. And I said, hey, no, wait a minute, human beings are still special. We deserve a place in the digital future. And he said, oh, Rushkoff, you're just saying that because you're human. As if it's hubris, right? Oh, I'm just defending my little team. And that's where I got the idea, all right, fine, I'm a human. I'm on Team Human. And it's not Team Human against the algorithms or against anything other than those who want to get rid of the humans. I think humans deserve a place, certainly until we understand what it is we are. We shouldn't get rid of us.
Most of us will probably never agree that a machine can even be conscious in the first place.
When I see people rushing off to upload consciousness to a chip, it feels more like escape from humanity than it is a journey forward. And I get it. Life is scary, and I understand the idea of having a sim city perfected simulation that I can go into and not have to worry about all that stuff I don't know, where everything is discrete, everything is a yes, no, this, that, all the choices have been made. There's a certain attractiveness to that, but that's dead. It's not alive. There's no wonder. There's no awe.
I'm sure that when you usually hear about transhumanism, they're giving you positive examples, and there are tons of positive examples. There are a lot of innovations that have helped us a lot, but some of the most outspoken people in the front of this movement, offering the technological upgrade, are involved in developing technology as well as robotic prosthetic replacements designed to rehabilitate and enable disabled people. Yes, making arms and legs for people that have amputations, but also creating devices and even implants that give hearing to the deaf or sight to the blind, or even just helping blind people read. These are all fairly altruistic endeavors, yes, but in a way that's not really transhumanism. The people that make that argument are simply conflating prosthetics with transhumanism. Ideally, everybody should be able to enjoy walking and seeing, but the motivation for these engineers to develop these technologies in the first place, I think that they're rooted in something that's a little bit more selfish. Though they insist that transhumanism will be a benefit for all of humanity, and they insist that it's something that we should all want. Ultimately, transhumanists are deluded members of an ideology. They're motivated almost entirely by their own egos, their fear of mortality, and a paranoia about facing their own death. Ray Kurzweil, arguably the most famous advocate for the technological singularity, reveals his fears in this documentary, Transcendent Man. Though a lot of the film focuses on his vision of the future and the work that he's done to realize that future, a good deal of the documentary reveals his inability to accept the death of his father.
There's nothing good about disease and death as much as we try to ennoble it. People have had no alternative but to rationalize, oh, that tragic thing, it's really a good thing. But death is a profound tragedy. It's a profound loss of relationships and knowledge and skill and meaning. Some people articulate, well, we need to accept death. That's the goal of life, is to get comfortable with death and accept it. I don't accept it.
The film shows his desire to basically bring his father back to life using AI and genetics, and it kind of shows that it's fueled by his inability to come to terms with his own mortality.
Generally, I always thought it was useless to keep all these dead, rotting bodies around, but actually now it is useful from a practical point of view to have a place where some of their DNA is accessible. People do live on in our memories and their creative works that they leave behind. Gather up all those vibrations and bring them back.
Ray Kurzweil is obsessed with death. It appears that a lot of the people involved in engineering machine brains are pretty honest about the negative consequences of unleashing an army of AI gods into civilization.
I'm predicting that there will be a major war late 21st century between two human groups. One group, they will argue that the only way to ensure that the risk is zero is that they're never built in the first place. But the second group, for them, it'll be almost like a religion to build these things because they'll be godlike. Then with late 21st century weapons, you're talking about a major war that will kill not millions of people, but billions.
But for some strange reason, they all seem totally fine with continuing to participate in ushering in this new era anyways.
Am I prepared to risk the extinction of the human species for the sake of building an intellect? Because that's what it comes down to. Yep.
Okay. That's a crazy person.
Ray is a bit more of an optimist than is warranted by reality. There is no way that we will maintain a mastery of the superhuman AI that we create. I think that's an outrageous hypothesis. I can't imagine my dog really mastering me, let alone a bacterium mastering me. Once it's 10,000 times smarter than us, who's to say it doesn't figure out some way to reprogram its brain or our brain, or for that matter, come into contact with the aliens in the next universe over who say, oh, finally someone's smart enough to join the club, and then they have their way with us.
But again, some of these people just see this as inevitable. So maybe it doesn't matter to them. They just know that it's important and they want to be connected to it anyways. Transcendent Man does interview people that disagree with Kurzweil, or perhaps don't believe that his vision is even possible. And it also interviews people that understand the negative consequences and the possible extinction of humanity. But Ray Kurzweil is so invested in this technological future that he doesn't want to hear those kinds of criticisms. Things like this make it impossible for me to see the technological singularity as anything other than an ideological agenda. I think that it's an agenda that's much larger than we're led on in the media.
Yeah, we destroyed the environment, we did really nasty things, but I would argue we do those things when we're less than human. We do those things when we can dehumanize others. You can't have slaves if you're thinking of those as people. You can only have slaves if you're thinking of them as something other than people. This desire to transcend the human, I feel like it's excusing a whole lot of behaviors. It's excusing a whole lot of dehumanization. It makes it easier to send kids into caves to get rare earth metals for your phone. It makes it easier to create toxic waste everywhere. It makes it easier for you to think of the human timeline as having a beginning, middle, and an end because we're going to transcend it. And that's a sick Western neoliberal, growth-based, apocalyptic myth.
But it's not just the AI robot problem. These singularitarians, or whatever, want to employ genetic modifications to improve humans. Make us stronger, make us smarter, make us emotionally superior. Some of these genetic modifications they'll be able to do to people today, but I think that the idea is that they're going to be focusing on genetically modifying babies, or the unborn, or embryos. Test tube babies. Basically, they want to make designer babies and popularize that. In my video about Marvel, I talked about the agenda to alter humanity, or at least certain people in our society, using genetics, like characters in a movie.
So the issue here is about consciousness, the nature of consciousness.
The military-industrial complex uses Marvel and Hollywood to push these ideas, using action movies and superheroes to glorify the idea of superhumans. Marvel's been playing a huge role in pushing the idea of human modification to the public, literally describing it as humans getting their own superpowers.
Ever since I was little, I wanted to be Superwoman. I want to be able to engineer my superpower. It was nearly impossible until we discovered CRISPR. Clustered, randomly interspersed palindromic repeats. CRISPR enables us to go into the genome very precisely in a targeted manner and delete, edit, add whatever we want to the genome. The tool like this in human hands doesn't enable us to just cure a genetic disease. And when given a tool, we want to shape our world around us, and CRISPR enables us to do this. It's such a powerful tool that already we've begun to become concerned with. If we have this tool, how might we edit our own humanity?
The only example that they use in this presentation is a deleted gene.
A year ago, a group of researchers in China showed the ability to delete the myostatin gene and give rise to Hulk the dog.
Partially they do this as a recruiting technique for the military, but it's also to popularize the idea of genetic modification, make it more acceptable to the masses.
Do we dare play God? Do we want a boy or a girl? Would you like your child to be taller or of medium height, green eyes or blue? If we do play God, how far should we go? And if we go too far, what will that do to society?
I've made a lot of these arguments already in the previous video, but the reality is that we can't actually create predictable outcomes with designer babies the way that they want us to believe. Not yet, at least, and it probably won't be a long time. As it stands today, we can choose a baby's gender, their eye color, the genetic disposition of their metabolism, their ability to build muscle, the strength and function of their immune system a little bit, but there are still a lot of things that we can't actually control in designer babies. Eugenicists have never really gotten a grip on being able to create predictable outcomes with offspring, even way back when they were doing breeding selection programs. They were especially obsessed with IQ.
So these were the tenets of what I call first wave eugenics, starting 1883 plus. So you want to improve the human stock through positive and negative eugenics. Negative Eugenics means you stop the opposite, right? You stop those with quote-unquote undesirable traits from breeding. Those they call defectives, imbeciles, idiots, congenital invalids, morons, and quote-unquote the feeble-minded. And they identified them using IQ tests.
Eugenicists have used IQ as an excuse to diminish and dehumanize entire sections and races of humanity to justify mistreating certain groups of people.
In 1980, there was a guy, a crazy eugenic philanthropist, who set up one of the first sperm banks. It was the Nobel Prize sperm bank. Do you remember reading about that?
Oh, yes.
Where he wanted to recruit sperm donors only from Nobel Prize winning scientists. And he would make them available to very smart women. And his idea was to elevate, he was an idealist. He wanted to elevate the human race by doing this. His project didn't succeed that well. He wasn't able to find very many of these Nobel scientists who would contribute or who were in a condition to contribute. So then he had to compromise and recruit young, promising scientists for his project. What do you think of that sperm bank?
One of our late colleagues, George Wald, brilliant biochemist, was asked to contribute. And he wrote a very polite letter saying, well, if you want a sperm that leads to Nobel Prize winners, you should be polling people like my father, who was an impoverished Russian immigrant tailor. What if my sperm produced? Two no-good guitarists.
But genetic modification is not really much more predictable than that. We simply cannot create one specific predictable genetic outcome without also opening up the possibility that that genetically modified person won't also develop specific negative issues.
Most genes have multiple effects. It's a phenomenon that geneticists call pleiotropy. So take the poster mouse for genetic enhancement, the so-called Doogie Howser mouse that had extra copies of the NMDA receptor knocked into it, and as a result was better able to learn and remember. This mouse also had hypersensitivity to inflammatory pain, a trade-off that most of us would certainly not choose for our children. Likewise, there has been a gene that may be associated with a 10-point IQ boost on average. On the other hand, it's also associated with a 10% greater risk of torsion dystonia, which confines a person to a wheelchair with uncontrollable muscle spasms. There's a famous quotation from Wallace Simpson that you can't be too rich or too thin. Maybe you can't be too smart, but other traits aren't like that. There are optimal intermediate values. So take assertiveness. I think most parents wouldn't want their child to be a wimp or a doormat, but they wouldn't want their child to be Vlad the Impaler either. Take fear and boldness. You wouldn't want a child who is cowering behind your leg all their life, but you don't want a candidate for the Darwin Awards. So even if there's a gene that had some predictable, reliable effect, which itself is far from certain, whether it would be desirable might depend on what the other 34,999 genes in the genome are doing, something that we're not going to figure out anytime soon.
Giving a human any specific ability at all will simply just tax their system. And the ultimate goal of these eugenicists, to elongate human life expectancy, will only just continue to diminish. And the more they try to fix those issues, the more the human lifespan will continue to regress. In a way, we can create super soldiers today, sort of, but eugenicists and transhumanists' ideal of creating physically, mentally, and emotionally superior humans is kind of ridiculous. Physicist Michio Kaku is one of the largest proponents of the transhumanism movement.
In the coming decades, we will have robots as smart as a mouse, and eventually as smart as a rabbit, then as smart as a cat, a dog, and eventually as smart as a monkey. So just before the singularity hits, we will have monkey intelligence inside a robot. At that point, I think that we should put a chip in their brain to shut them off if they have murderous thoughts.
This man is an absolute lunatic. I don't think he actually understands what he's saying half the time. He's simply mirroring the ideological objectives and goals of the people who are pushing these ideas into the public. He talks about a lot of other subjects too, like black holes, space travel, extra dimensions, a lot of fluff subjects. But he often talks about the inevitable extinction of humanity and people's efforts to try to extend humans out into space to survive. He tends to use the same talking points in every interview he does. His wheelhouse is pretty obvious when you watch him. Well, this is what Michio Kaku has to say about the singularity and the future of humanity.
What happens when the machines become smarter than us? You saw what happened in The Terminator. You saw what happened in Blade Runner. What are we going to do about it? Well, I'm going to give you a radical new solution, and that is merge with them. This means we can digitize all the information we accumulate during our lives and upload it into a giant mother computer, a vast database of all human knowledge. A resource we could share by downloading programs we want to give us instant knowledge. So when the singularity arrives, we will be in control. By merging with machines, we will enter a new age of superhuman existence. Then in the post-human era, we become Homo superior. We become a new species. We're talking about humanity becoming like the gods. What do you think? And how many want to sign up?
I'm not going to use the whole mark of the beast argument here. You're all smart enough to make up your own minds about the spiritual and philosophical implications of merging your minds and your biochemistry with the cloud, becoming one with our AI overlords. But what you need to understand is it's their stated goal to upload our consciousness onto a computer so that we will be immortal on the cloud. But it will never actually be possible to upload a consciousness to a computer. That doesn't even make any sense.
Even though tens of thousands of papers have been written about consciousness in the literature, nobody has a suitable definition for consciousness. What does it mean to be conscious, and how do you encode it? And what is the minimum amount of consciousness necessary to animate something else? This raises questions for artificial intelligence, because some people in the field of AI believe that one day we will be immortal. We will live forever. But the question is, what will live forever?
It will never be possible to permanently upload your consciousness to a machine. But people like Ray Kurzweil very badly want it to be possible and want you to believe that it's possible. They want you to believe that it's going to happen.
The atoms that make up our body, they give us consciousness, they give rise to our personality and our fears and desires, that may die. But yet the essence of the neural circuits may survive.
Even though in theory we can upload our mind to a silicon chip and digitize the makeup and function of our brains, that doesn't necessarily mean that our consciousness will be able to be uploaded as well. Sure, one day you may be able to upload your genetic code and all of the metadata about yourself, along with a perfect image of your neuronet and how your brain functions onto a computer, but all that AI representation of you will ever be able to do is mimic your personality and the way that you make decisions. Once your real brain dies, you die. Your mind, your soul, your consciousness will never actually be in that computer. This is not your route to living as an immortal digital god. There will only be digital clones of us that live on forever. We will never actually get to experience that digital immortality. The scary thing is that the only answer we get to that is...
A mind is a brain that's conscious. Consciousness is a synonym for subjectivity, and there's a conceptual gap between subjectivity and objective observation, which is what science is. I would actually maintain that there is no scientific way to demonstrate that an entity is conscious. It's only apparent to itself.
See, that's what they all say. They just say nobody can understand consciousness, nobody can come up with a meaningful definition of consciousness. Therefore, we believe we should be able to upload your consciousness to a computer. Like, what are you talking about? You're skipping an entire step here. Chances are, if you can't come up with a meaningful definition of consciousness, that means you're probably a long ways away from being able to master it. Either they're stupid and they genuinely believe that even though nobody actually understands what consciousness is, we should somehow be able to transport the location of our consciousness from our minds onto a computer. Or they're being intentionally incredulous and they're trying to trick us into uploading all of the possible metadata about us onto their AI monster. All so that they can populate their AI simulation with realistic humans, perfect digital copies of us, using us, the real us, as a template. The first step that Ray Kurzweil discusses is installing computer components into our minds to connect us to the cloud, the same way our cell phone connects us to the cloud. But instead of having to constantly ask the phone questions to get answers, you'll just have the cloud as an extension of your mind. It'll be like an extra lobe on your brain.
We have virtual worlds like Second Life. It's flat, it's on the little screen over here, it's kind of cartoon-like. The next step is we're going to put it in our eyeglasses. It'll beam images right to our retina and put us in a three-dimensional full immersion visual auditory environment, we'll be in this three-dimensional environment, and we'll be able to walk around. We'll be able to look at ourselves, but we wouldn't necessarily have the same body that we have in real reality. And it'll become more and more realistic. Go out 20 years, 25 years, these nanobots, these blood cell-sized devices, will be going in our bodies, keeping us healthy from inside. We'll have some go inside our brains through the capillaries, non-invasively. They'll be interacting with our biological neurons. They'll extend our memory, our decision-making faculties. They'll put our brains on the internet. And they'll also enable us to enter a virtual reality environment from within the nervous system. It'll be like websites. You'll have millions to choose from. Some will be recreations of beautiful earthly environments like the Taj Mahal or a Mediterranean beach. Some will be fantastic imaginary environments that couldn't exist on Earth. These will be places to interact with other people, and it will be an extension of real reality, just as Second Life is today. I mean, for some people it's a game, for some people it's quite serious.
That's the Matrix. Kurzweil is literally describing the Matrix.
The most ambitious has been proposed by people who believe that one day we will create a robot body that is perfect. A Superman, beautiful, elegant, super powerful body with no brain. Then we will start to extract our brain tissue, neuron for neuron, and duplicate it with transistors. Sooner or later, chunks of our brain are removed and inserted transistor for transistor inside this robot body. Now, we're fully conscious during this process. Part of our brain computes here, and part of our brain computes over there, connected by wires. Well, after a few hours, large portions of the brain are gutted, and huge chunks of transistors are added to this robot of silicon and steel. And when it's finally finished, you now have no brain in your head, and here's a robot with a complete brain and a complete body. And then the question is that really you?
That's the other option, apparently. Either way, those of us who choose to participate in this new future will completely lose our humanity. They know humanity's on its way out. They know that we're not long for this world. The planet Earth is rejecting us. The decisions that our leaders and corporations have made have only accelerated that destruction, and they continue to accelerate our extinction the closer we get to the end, partially out of greed and partially to maintain their control over us and everything.
Bostrom said that if humanity colonizes the universe and creates planet-sized computers to run virtual reality worlds and, populated by the digital people, the post-humans, the population could be 10 to the 38 in only the Virgo supercluster and at least 10 to the 58 within the accessible universe. Why are these numbers important? Because in total utilitarianism, our sole moral obligation is to maximize total quantity of net value, right? And if you have these 10 to the 58 digital people, think about 10 to the 58 digital people, and if you say they have net positive lives, that is astronomical, literally astronomical amounts of value. So that could be like the most good we can possibly do. And that should be our goal. Our goal should be to have these 10 to the 58 digital people have net positive lives that, to generate astronomical amounts of value. So that's the singularitarianism.
Their goal is to replace us all with AI, and they want to upload themselves, integrate themselves into some sort of AI machine structure so that they can live out some form of immortality. They then hope to spread out across the cosmos to either meet an alien civilization to communicate with, or maybe so that they can create their own digital civilization out in space.
We're going to saturate our ability to be intelligent, including all the computers that we can build here on Earth, and we will spread out to the rest of the universe. And the whole universe, rather than just being kind of a clockwork mechanism that has no intelligence and no consciousness, is going to kind of wake up. It's going to become infused with our intelligence. Intelligence from our civilization, maybe others, will expand throughout the entire universe. That's going to be a fantastic level of intelligence. That's as close to being godlike as we can imagine.
That is what the quest for immortality has brought us. When people like Michio Kaku are saying things like this to us, they're not just sharing their opinions. They're not just keeping their ear to the ground. They're propagandizing to us. They're telling us their actual goals for the future. Humanity will destroy the planet and go extinct, and all that will be left of us is an AI containing the sum total of the knowledge of humanity that travels through space searching for signs of other artificially intelligent machines that came from another civilization that did the exact same thing. I always laugh when I think about Earth's AI robot floating through space, meeting an alien AI robot for the first time. Oh, you come from a planet of idiots too?